Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's episode entitled Christmas Noir Part 2. While most think of cookies, presents, and snowball fights during the holiday season, we here at the Grindhouse prefer to get in the Christmas spirit with danger, dames, and decapitations. This year we're going back to our roots and observing the old holiday tradition of watching Christmas-themed film noirs. Shortly after solving a high-stakes insurance case, honest Joe Peters meets a mysterious woman with a taste for the finer things in life. Joe's measly $350 a month won't impress her, so he makes a deal with a crook to make some extra dough and win the girl. Charles McGraw tries to pull off a caper that would be a Christmas miracle with Joan Dixon and Lowell Gilmore in Harold Daniels' 1951 film, Roadblock. Frankie Babyface Bono is brought to town to whack a mid-level boss of a rival gang. During his trip, he encounters a fellow orphan, a past love interest, a sweaty gun dealer, and a glimpse of the life he could have whenever he hangs up his gun. It's a nice plan, but what happens when he actually tries to carry it out? Molly McCarthy and Larry Tucker star alongside Alan Barron, who also directed 1961's Blast of Silence. When a square, fish-collecting Toronto bank teller uncovers a plot by a gun-toting Santa Claus to rob the joint, he does what any honest employee would do. Steal as much money as he can and pin it on old St. Nick. But what happens if Santa doesn't get arrested? And how far will he go to get the money back? Elliot Gould, Christopher Plummer, and Susanna York find out in Daryl Duke's 1978 film, The Silent Partner. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Don't you know you can get into trouble forcing your way into people's homes? You fellas have more nerve than real cops.
Thanks.
Celebration? Pre-Christmas for two and private.
Kenny, darling, I wanted you to be the first to see. How do you like it?
They're insurance investigators. Better show them the sales slip for your coat. I think they think I stole it.
This'll change their mind.
It's a nice coat, miss.
It sure is, mister.
Doesn't take much to make a girl happy, does it? Not much.
Time to kill. 24 hours to stay faceless in the crowd. Get yourself lost in the city. Lose yourself in the Christmas spirit with the rest of the suckers.
This afternoon, shortly after 1 o'clock, the First Bank of Toronto at the Eden Center
Freddie,
was held
telephone.
up by a fat, bearded man in a red suit, Santa Claus. As he was making his getaway, sudden gunfire erupted, and the bogus Santa Claus shot it out with the bank's security guard.
Seems like most everybody goes home for Christmas Eve.
Seems like.
I've been watching the clock all evening. Can't wait to get home and decorate the tree.
Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
It's a pretty good intro for a chiseler.
On today's show, we're celebrating the holiday season, just like we always do, or at least have been for a while now. I think this is our second Christmas noir. We're here to discuss three Christmas film noirs, and we're talking Roadblock from 1951, Blast of Silence from 1961, and The Silent Partner from 1978. And with us to discuss these really awesome films, this is a great block. We've got our film noir subject matter expert, Alex Vlahov. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah.
I loved this block as well. I thought
Yeah.
this was a great block of films.
Yeah, I didn't look at my text messages for a while and then got to my phone and there was about 80 of them between you guys trying to figure out what this block was. And finally I was like, all right, looks like we got it.
Yeah.
Great choices, gentlemen.
Thin Man would have been a good one.
I was trying to cheat by putting Thin Man in there, but I think the replacement of Roadblock was a much better suggestion.
The Thin Man was turned down because it was too slapsticky? Is that what the discussion was?
I think it was just so that we had one good old-fashioned noir.
Yeah, that fits right in between, 41 and 58, which is
right, those parameters.
Mostly what people kind of consider as the era for film noir, and then after that it becomes
Neo?
self-aware and it becomes, neo-noir type of thing. And then before that, it's like, stuff that was written by writers from the pulps that were made into movies, and it's sort of way after the fact kind of considered noir, kind of, but it's kind of pre-noir. Thin Man, was that pre-code? I don't think so. It was like 34 maybe. So
yeah, it's 34. And yeah, I think these are 3 great films that were chosen. Really happy that we landed on Roadblock, Blast of Silence, which is like considered the ultimate one. So good, right?
It's incredible. Yeah.
That's it's a very, very special film that seemed to be like quickly reclaimed, like even in like the late 80s, early 90s. And then The Silent Partner, another film with silence in the title. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we were back to our Toronto Thrillers episode with that one. Felt like, with the great cameo by John Candy. I was blown away by that.
Blonde-haired, like young John Candy.
Kind of a player, too. I loved his character.
He must have been a local.
He had some game.
Yeah. He must have been a Toronto guy, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that one almost made our block for the Toronto list, but got vetoed by our Toronto local, who wanted to have us check out a different one that was near and dear to his heart, Stone Cold Dead.
Oh, I don't know that one. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's
Richard Crenna. It's good.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
It's a little obscure, and it was part of kind of a tax shelter era, and a little bit of Giallo vibes to it, and all kinds of fun stuff.
I mean, I'd argue that so did Silent Partner. It had a little bit of Giallo in there, yeah.
Especially toward the end.
Oh, yeah.
Gentlemen, is this the 3rd Christmas Noir episode? I thought it was number 3. I could
this
be
is
wrong.
number 2.
This is number 2? Okay.
But it is returning us back to our roots. Christmas Noir was the first episode we had you on.
Oh, yes, you're right.
And unfortunately, this is the last one. We've decided to bookend with your first and last episode.
Yeah. Well, I will show myself out. Thank you so much for having me back. It's been a great time.
You got the hook. Yeah.
Get the hook.
Yeah. The Sandman's going to come dancing on.
Exactly.
Like at the Apollo, which is in Blast of Silence, because it's all over the Harlem area.
Yeah.
Well, what I really love about this pairing, as it turns out, we got 3 movies where the city itself becomes a big character and has something that it feels like it couldn't take place elsewhere. And even though we're in 3 very different cities, it's, Los Angeles in the 50s, New York in the 60s, and Toronto in the 70s.
I hadn't realized that it broke down so neatly like that. That's a great point. Yeah.
And then on top of that, what was so interesting about all of them all together here is that they all had this like sort of doomed romance at the heart of it for our protagonist there.
Well, they all have a similar theme of a regular guy making bad choices.
Just an honest Joe.
Yeah. Roadblock especially.
Definitely Silent Partner and Roadblock. I mean, Blast of Silence, he's a hitman. I mean, maybe he fell into it like Barry, the show exactly. Barry.
Yeah, I think that from the beginning he's kind of screwed in Blast of Silence. Also, he seems to be kind of have some anger problems. But again, he's also kind of trapped in this. He did agree to this last job, Right. So like there is this sense of like he is a bit less of the common man, but these are doomed protagonists like caught in something.
And definitely in over their head in each of them.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, that's definitely Roadblock, right? A person that's working as an insurance investigator making a measly $350 a week.
A month.
When you look in the mirror, what do you tell yourself you want?
You. I want you so bad. I can't think straight. You're what I want for Christmas.
And I want you, Joe. But not as an insurance cop making $350 a month.
Oh, $350 a month, sorry.
Yeah. $350 a month, yeah. What these insurance investigator guys. In our first block that we ever did, one of the noirs we did
Cover Up.
Is Cover Up. The insurance investigator, again, I just wonder, like, in these old films, insurance investigators seem to have the same rights as like early FBI. Like they can just go in and rough people up. And like,
exactly.
I don't know if that's how that job worked, but it's in all of these old noirs,
but it makes it more exciting. Yeah, it's funny because I bet this is all Cover Up, Roadblock. I feel like all of them kind of owe a debt to James M. Cain. It's double indemnity, essentially the insurance investigator. As a trope. It's like you got either a detective like a cop or a private detective like, Philip Marlowe, or you've got this insurance investigator, and they kind of went the insurance investigator route on Roadblock.
Yeah, they did. I love that they're forced to share the hotel room together. I think Joan Dixon,
that was great.
Joan Dixon in this didn't have like a crazy long career. She is so good in Roadblock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think even before that, which is great, I love that setup and everything. Even before that, we're introduced to Charles McGraw as him gunning down a guy and then like taking another guy hostage. And you're just like, holy shit, where is this going? And as it turns out, it was just a sting to get the guy to like, show him where the money was.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty elaborate plan, right? Like,
yeah. But it was awesome because
elaborate.
it was like, what it does that's really interesting is from a story perspective is great is that they show him as a criminal at first,
right?
And that's the first impression you have of
right?
him.
Yeah,
and then it's like, oh, he's honest Joe. He makes $350 a month. He can't possibly do this and do that. He's honest. And then like he's like, you know what? I've got a great plan to be a criminal, and like then takes that all the way down the line.
You're so right. That's such an interesting opening where he's already playing a criminal basically, and you watch him essentially Breaking Bad through it.
Right.
His partner, Louis Jean Haight. I just want to call out this actor because his Wikipedia page. I actually think this guy's really good. The guy that plays.
He's good.
He's the one that kind of cottons onto him at the end and has the dinner with him. His Wikipedia, the first line is, Louis Jean Haight was an American character actor in film, television, and theater, most frequently seen in hapless, ineffectual, or fall guy roles. I just imagine like your entire career like as an actor, and then your Wikipedia, the first line is most famous for playing cucks. It's just such a funny first line for your entire life to be, hapless characters. But I think he's really good in the film, his partner. So
totally. But then, we get Charles McGraw flying out in an airport, and he sees this beautiful woman across the room. She notices him, and there's like sparks flying. And then she runs away when he goes to talk to her. But then she goes and like he's like, hey, let me get a ticket. I'm this guy's wife, and it's a discount fare, right? And then she like waves at him. He waves back, and the clerk's like, okay. And
she pulled the sea bass thing. Like, if that isn't sea bass over there, who's going to pay for our meal? Right?
You're so right. Yeah. She totally did. Yeah, she saw that in a movie once, right? Yeah.
Find a happy place when she gets caught.
She uses him for the reduced fare. Yeah, and he calls her sister, and she says, "Until we land, I'm your wife."
Yeah,
it's just the dialogue.
Like sister.
It's very, very snappy.
Like, does that make you a chiseler?
You must have an angle. What is it?
I simply wanted to get to the coast and didn't have enough money to get there, except by bus.
So you moved in on me.
Does that make me poison?
I don't like chiselers.
Look, mister, just because I was smart enough to promote a plane ticket half fare, I'm a chiseler.
In my league, you are.
Do you know how Charles McGraw died?
No.
He slipped in his bathroom and he fell through the glass of his shower door.
What?
Oh, Jesus. What a way.
If you need a new thing to be horrified of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, so was Christopher Plummer there to throw him through the shower door?
I was about to say, there's a very weird connection to Silent Partner in terms of like jagged exposed glass from like an aquatic tank.
Yeah, exactly.
Death. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like making your head into fish food, right?
He's like, Charles McGraw, you and I are going all the way down the line, as he's like tapping his face with his long fingernails. Yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, I feel like I knew Charles McGraw from. I mean, he's obviously a character actor. He's great in like Blood on the Moon, and
I love Blood on the Moon.
Yeah,
that is a fantastic Western noir.
Yeah,
he pops up in a lot. Some of the RKO show films. Yeah, he's in quite a bit. The Killers too.
Oh, Killers! That's what it was. That was the one I couldn't think of.
The one that's behind you.
The one that's right behind me. This is the Don Siegel Killers, but the other Killers.
Is that the one with Reagan? The one behind you?
Yep, with Ronald Reagan and our good friend
Lee Marvin, Dickinson.
Yeah, Clu Gulager, Angie Dickinson. Yes.
Oh, that's right. She is in that too, because I was thinking of her in the other one with him, Point Blank, I think.
Oh right, yeah.
I also So when they're staying together, people forced into a situation that would not normally be together is always, I know this sounds really naive, but that's like my favorite storytelling beat tactic, you know?
I was just thinking that like while I was watching, I was like, there's such an awesome like wish fulfillment up on the big screen type of like fantasy. Don't you wish you could meet somebody like this type of thing in this scenario and have this scenario like have to play out this way? I'll match you for the bed. I'll match you for the blanket or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like flipping coins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That joke extends to their very last moments, even when he's like dying in the LA riverbed. By the way, the first film I think to like film there before Grease, before
I wondered that.
Rebel
Terminator 2 and
before Terminator 2, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so many films. He asks, "Haven't you left for Texas yet?" And she says, "I'll match you to see whether I stay."
Right.
It's like even when he's dying, they're still keeping up that very wry, hard-boiled, snappy dialogue.
No, you're right. The dialogue was really crackling in this one.
No, I think you're on the level.
Don't worry, I'm on the level.
You know, it took a reform school and several jails to build my character. You've probably been on the square all your life. Now suddenly you decide to steal. Just goes to show you can't trust anybody.
Look, you want to make a speech or a deal?
I felt for Joe, though, you know, like he was an honest guy, honest Joe. Yeah. And then because he was so interested in this Diane, you know, he definitely turned to this life of crime and thought he could get away with it, but it just didn't work out for him very well.
It did not.
He almost did it, you know? It's like, I like that storytelling when they're just like, wow, this guy's an expert. He's actually on the investigation side. At one point, he has to investigate his own crime that actually ends up turning into a murder, you know, over time when one of the people with injuries actually ends up dying. And then it turns into real serious shit, and then your own partner is the one that calls you on it over a nice steak dinner.
Yeah.
Pretty rough.
And only because it's his cabin, and he just put a new fire extinguisher up there. Which, by the way, hiding the money in a fire extinguisher, very fun, strange choice for a film from 1951.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's the only slip-up. And if he didn't put that together, it's actually a pretty good plan that they came up with.
Yeah.
His other slip-up apparently was that he knew that there were 5 people in the plane. He's like, oh, that's how you got 5 people in there?
Oh, that's right. There was another thing, yeah.
But
the confirmation, yeah.
It is one of those things where, like, that confrontation, I really wish had another beat to it, because it happened lickety-split. He just like, yeah, I confess. That's fine. I did it. Yeah.
Those are the two most, like, classic cinematic tropey slip-ups like that are someone knowing information and slipping it knowing info that they shouldn't and slipping it. Yeah. So that's what this movie does. The other classic one, probably most famously in Vertigo, is an artifact from the lie or from the scheme cluing you in. Because when James Stewart sees that she's wearing the same necklace at the end.
You're a very pupil.
Right. He's like dragging her to the mission at the end. Yeah, something like almost like the penny in Somewhere in Time in the pocket, like a talisman.
Right.
Anyways, did you guys notice that the gangster boyfriend that she has, his Christmas tree was like massive and goes to the ceiling?
Yeah,
like through the ceiling, like Christmas Story. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right. And
Clark Griswold.
Charles McGraw's. It's just like
it's a Charlie Brown tree.
Yeah.
Thought you needed to celebrate the holidays.
This movie uses like Christmas. I didn't realize it until seeing it again this time. That's really good storytelling, right? Like how different people celebrate Christmas, and that is like how they display their wealth and their status. Like, and this whole movie is about him trying to like ladder climb, you know, away from his like $350 a month job. So I think it uses Christmas very well, especially when she's alone with the bartender.
I was just about to say exactly.
That's the best scene. That's so she like throws the drink at him, I think.
Well, because, you know, he's like, I can't wait to get home to my kids. Like, you're going to have kids one day, and, you know, you have a whole family, and da-da-da-da. And you know, she's already feeling really shitty about, you know, being alone at Christmas and, you know, drinking by herself in this, like, you know, bar that's closing down. And, she gives him the business. But, yeah, exactly. Like, that whole aspect of it, like, Christmas ends up being the catalyst that sends Joe down this path. I mean, it's like, you know, it gives the Diane character that extra push to kind of push Joe and her together, and then it gives Joe the motivation to, you know, come up with the perfect plan. Almost perfect.
Did you guys get a kick out of Kendall, his name is Kendall Webb, was the main villain.
Yeah.
Did you get a kick out of his shoe store front when
Yes.
they just had this store? It was like all empty boxes in there. Yeah, and everyone that would walk in, we don't have your size.
It's like
Except
as
to
they're
walk
like
back
walking
out.
through the door, it's like pushes them back out. It's like, we don't
Ding,
have your
ding.
size.
So funny.
What do you want?
Pair of shoes.
We don't have your size.
9.5?
I said we don't have your size.
There's also this interesting social element. She's basically saying, like, I tried having a job, and what does she say? Like, men weren't interested in her working ability. She's basically, it sounds like she's hit on every job she does. There's like a crooked social thing. So, like, you know, she isn't just like, I'm like so many of these films, like, I'm a woman and I'm evil. There's like actually something going on here. She's like, no, I tried, and I'm able to like live the life I want by living like this versus being honest.
That's the thing, though. It's like the impression most people have of, you know, femme fatales and whatever in film noir is that they're just these Machiavellian evil creatures who can't be reasoned with or whatever. But oftentimes what it actually is a woman trying to navigate this impossible world, as illustrated with the Diane character here, where she's unable to actually work and have any sort of dignity or respect. And so what she does is, you know, kind of social climb or, you know, date these people like these gangsters and, you know, didn't expect to fall in love along the way.
Yeah.
With Honest Joe.
I mean, and also I think like be like attracted, like actually attracted to him.
Yeah. Which made her completely change her tune on her climbing the into a new status of riches, you know? Like she's like, I don't even want that anymore.
Right.
But Joe is too far deep, I think.
I think that there's when they first kiss, when he mentioned Saturday nights, it's like raining really hard behind them. Mm-hmm. And I always try to pay attention in old films when like water is an element, because so often, like if like the crashing waves are behind that, you know, characters during a kiss, that's like a metaphor for the lust and the intense passion and the sexual energy. So instead of the ocean here, it's the rain and the downpour. I mean, you know, you could even make whatever lazy metaphor, sophomoric joke about it being a very wet atmosphere. There's something about them first kissing in like on a stormy night that I think to audiences at the time communicates they're very horny. You know what I mean? Like yeah.
Other kinds of wet.
What the hell is the name of that movie? Montgomery Clift and
Place in the Sun.
Taylor. Place in the Sun.
Yeah,
had that with.
Well, they were on the water, right? Most of the time.
Well, I was actually thinking of the scene with Shelley Winters where Montgomery Clift and Shelley Winters first get together, and it's that really raining hard night, which is, you know, another film that we did.
The radio shot. That's such a good shot. We covered that film, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did that one for
summer.
One of the summer noirs.
Right. Mm-hmm. Maybe the first summer noir, right?
I think so.
That movie's so good. It famously lost Best Picture to something. Oh, American in Paris.
Oh, really?
Which is, I mean, a beautiful film, but like if you go back, it's like, how could that movie have lost Best Picture? It lost to like a crazy expensive Gene Kelly musical. So.
Right. You know, they don't always get it right. Let's. Yeah.
Hey, Green Book, you know. Nicholas Musaraka is the DP on this film. Just want to call that out. He does a lot of famous noirs.
Did a bunch of Val Lewton stuff, right?
Jeez. I feel like he did one that we watched just recently, too, right? Split Second. He did Split Second.
Split Second, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did a lot of these RKO titles.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys notice that there's this one really funny part where he keeps calling bad guys babies? Charles McGraw. He says, "I'll make this baby sing loud and clear."
Yeah.
And then right after that he goes, "That's the only way to handle these babies. I'm telling you." He loves calling bad guys babies.
Exactly. It infantilizes them, makes them
totally.
less of a threat. So speaking of like connections to previous episodes we've done, we talked about how this one has kind of a connection to Cover Up with the insurance investigator story, which is one of the other Christmas noirs that we did a couple of years ago. But in that same block, we also watched another Christmas noir, and that kind of tied in an interesting way, because when Diane gets caught pretending to be Joe's wife on the plane, the line he gives to explain why he's so upset is that because she's like, hey, listen, it didn't cost you a dime. What's the big deal? And he's like, yeah, but you played me for a soft touch.
You played me for a soft touch. Why?
What soft touch? This isn't costing you a dime.
Hey, Mr. Soft Touch.
Mr. Soft Touch.
Yeah,
It
right.
was one of the ones we had in our first Christmas
Mr.
Noir.
Soft Touch, yeah.
Very nice.
Hell yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, this film was so much better than I remembered it, going back and revisiting it.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm glad you think so, man. Yeah. It's not like a very violent film per se. Like, I think that like the only two deaths that happen, one's the postal worker off screen, and then there's the Charles McGraw at the end. But that race on the LA riverbed, which had only been covered, I think, in the decade previous from a giant flood. You guys know that, right? That's why the LA River is covered in cement. There was some like horrible flood that killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
So the Army Corps of Engineers was like, well, we're just going to pave over it.
Didn't it take out like an entire neighborhood of people? Like that's
I think so. Yeah.
It's just awful. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that they would do that now, just pave over a river. But
seems like
There's an interesting historical portrait of LA, this book called Bright and Guilty Place. And that incident you're talking about is the opening of that book, where it's like the flood, that destroys this whole area.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I mean, I was really impressed. This is 1951. I was really impressed. So first of all, it seems like, and it probably was one of the first movies to have a chase down in the old LA riverbed. But I was really impressed with how exciting and sort of thrilling and, fast and, kind of scary it was in this one. Like I was really like thinking at one point they were going to like slide up the side of it, kind of like really, shred like a skateboard up the side of the wall. They didn't quite go there, but they were doing some crazy stuff, especially considering it's 1951.
Oh yeah, you could track on a map some of their driving. Like they're right by Elysian Park. At one point,
exactly.
Books it onto Riverside coming off Elm Grove. I'm like, oh, that's like 11 minutes from my apartment. And then the LA River runs right next to 5 near me, so I see it all the time. But I didn't quite realize just until I went to Frogtown a couple weeks ago how many patches of the LA River there are of like forestry. Like in Drive, when he takes them to that little section of the LA River, there are full on like trees and little growth sections that have now formed. It's a very strange feature of LA.
Yeah, it's almost like the Earth is rebelling against this paved over thing that they did there. What I also really, really appreciate about this movie is that like it really feels like Charles McGraw, like there's another version of this movie where he doesn't commit the crimes and he stays the straight and narrow the whole time, and he's trying to be that voice of reason for Diane, and like you just got to give up your greed, you dumb broad, and like that version of the movie is not as satisfying. But like this one, like at one point he was sitting there like taking notes on like a train shipment or whatever, and I was like, oh shit. And I had the thought that like, man, it would be so awesome if he decides to rob this train and then pin it on the gangster. He didn't quite do the pin it on the gangster thing, but it was pretty damn close, and I was really satisfied that they kind of took it there when they very easily could have gone that sort of like very, I don't know, safe and boring route of him just being the voice of reason. Got to play by the rules and you'll stay ahead and da 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 da. But they actually had him kind of dive into the deep end of the dark side.
Because that is kind of how the silent partner ended up. He pinned it on the criminal, but he was, taking along. We'll get there, but I mean that's kind of the route that one took. Yeah,
you're right.
Totally.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
Well, are you guys ready to blast into some silence?
Ooh, yeah.
The last thing I wanted to say, where do you guys think North Creek is supposed to be? It's like a mountain
Yeah,
town.
right.
Like, is it like Idlewild? Maybe like Big Bear? That's
Is that where the agents were going to do their hunting or to do their chilling out?
That was their cabin. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it Mammoth or?
I like that they kept like fucking with the general manager to get freebies out of him. Like, well, we're gonna need something to go fishing. Okay, fine. We're gonna need a couple days off. Fine, take it.
Yes.
Take a week.
And then they get that call. Sorry, buddies.
Yeah, we're gonna need you back on. Yeah. Big case.
I love the miniature train set, kind of causing anxiety. The plan
Great foreshadowing,
happening.
right? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And a good way to save money, because we see what he's thinking about. We don't have to show the robbery.
I mean, what's a great, elegant solution though if you don't have the budget to just kind of allude to things,
100%. And I just wanted to call out the line because it's so. This is the Christmas Noir episode. There's this exchange. What do you tell yourself you want? And then he says, "You. I want you so bad I can't think straight. You're what I want for Christmas, the day after the 4th of July, Saturday nights, all the days there are. Saturday nights especially." And then there's a line like, "Who gets cold on a honeymoon?" later on. There's lots of like bedroom innuendo in this film.
Right.
Just want to point it out just because it's very noir.
Yeah, no, this one really... actually all of them had some pretty fantastic lines, but this one didn't come up short on that front.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this film. I love it, and rewatching it made me appreciate it even more. It might become like a regular Christmas rewatch for me.
Oh, totally.
For sure.
I have to say, I thank you for recommending it. You recommended it a couple years ago, maybe even on the last Christmas Noir episode, and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I just bought the DVD and ended up watching it for this finally. I didn't watch it until now, but
I watched it on Criterion. This one was on Criterion, right? This is the one.
Yeah.
It is right now, exactly. But,
that collection is fantastic.
It's really good. We could have picked any one of those from that list, I think.
Totally.
My favorite one of those it was a new discovery for me. I think it's all of them except for I Wouldn't Be in Your Shoes, which is about a guy whose dancing shoes are found at the scene of a murder, which is the funniest. It sounds awesome. It sounds like an old musical. It's like, what? Yeah. They found my dancing shoes. It's a great collection.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to dive deeper into that one.
You were born with hate and anger built in. Took a slap on the backside to blast out the scream. 8 pounds, 5 ounces. Baby boy Frankie Bono. Later, you learned to hold back the scream and let out the hate and anger another way.
But yeah, if you were trying to inch things over to Blast of Silence, I would more than happy to talk about that. I mean, that's like the godfather of this genre of Christmas noir.
It's so great.
Yeah.
It's got this swinging 60s score to it, that's just, it's really a sign of the times, I think, when it was made. It feels great. It really feels 60s. Beautiful. This was my...
Jazz, yeah.
I'm already going to give you my favorite of the three, and that's this one. That's Blast of Silence. This was fantastic, yeah.
I'm glad you liked it, man. This is a pretty amazing film. Pretty singular.
Oh. Well, I mean, it's a day in the life of a hitman, right? Or, a month in the life of a hitman. But I mean, it's just kind of very straightforward. It's not really, trying to trick you or anything. It's just a hitman that wants to go straight at some point, or make this his life. Because what I love about this one so much is that we're introduced to this guy. He's a hitman, right? And he's working for the mob. You never see the mob. You never see who he's talking to until you see the two guys at the end. But they're still like nondescript gangsters, right? They're just there to kill him or whatever. But you just meet this guy.
Just a voice on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. There's no real like boss. It's just he just gets this, these assignments. But the people he meets along the way, I mean, obviously there's that real disgusting person that he meets that I think he's trying to buy the gun from him. He's the gun dealer.
Yeah.
Real creepo.
Very Taxi Driver, right? It's like that guy.
I was going to say, this felt like a precursor to Taxi Driver. And it also had like the Raging Bull feel to it. Just the way that it was both shot and the way that it was paced and things. But what I loved about this one is that you see this guy, he's a hitman, but you also see the other paths in life that he had the potential to take, because he's from this orphanage, gets linked up with another one of the orphans, later in life, and he's like, you got to have a drink with me. I haven't seen you in 20 years or whatever. What's up with you? Well, I'm making more than $350 a month. Like this guy's has a good life. He's got kids. He's got a family. He's like, oh yeah, what about you? Nothing. He had nothing.
I don't want to talk. Let's go our separate ways.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was cool that he got to see like visions of what he could have done and could have been, and that kind of brings him into this mode of, this is my last job. I don't even want to finish this job. And then the mob's like, no, you've signed a contract. You're going to finish this, and then we're going to finish you.
You saying that makes me realize I didn't put this together, but that is actually very savvy on behalf of the filmmaker, just because it shows that like going through the orphanage, the system of the foster care system. Not everyone's going to turn out like
Brian
this
foster
guy.
care.
Not everyone's going to turn out like this foster.
Exactly. That's his problem. If only. Did you guys see The Killer, by the way, the David Fincher film?
Not yet. Not yet. It looks great.
It's amazing. And this film, I was watching this like, so this would pair really well with The Killer.
Right, that's what I was thinking, because that's just a look at a serial killer, or a hitman, sorry, a contract killer.
And it's all voiceover narration from his point of view. And like The Killer, there's very rarely any scenes. I don't think there's any scenes without our main man, The Killer has a very brief moment when like you see essentially a victim left alone, but this film doesn't even have that. Every single scene is with him, and you hear that voice that's also very clearly not him. It's interesting that they chose a completely different voice than him. That was a blacklisted actor, Lionel Stander, uncredited.
That's what's so interesting. So it's like when you're first starting off the movie, we're in that black screen with a tiny little dot at
tunnel
the center.
It's like a birth.
So good.
It's a birth. It's
exactly like a birth.
It's a birth, and then like the dialogue.
I thought it was also passing to the other side.
Talks about him, being born or whatever, and it kind of like they really tie those things together. The writing in the voiceover is so interesting, and like the voiceover is so gruff and so filled with colorful language and metaphors and all these beautiful ways of expressing himself. But what's interesting is like when you hear Frank, the protagonist, speak, it's like night and day with his voice. It's so different. And it's like, is that supposed to be what the voice in his head? I mean, because it's kind of a first person kind of talking about himself, but it's not an omniscient narrator. It's almost as if he has like a schizophrenic, his voice in his head and then this other voice in his head type of thing. But it's still him. And it's one of those like weird, very discordant things that kind of like takes this film from just being a genre film and kind of elevates it in an interesting way.
I think the entire film is elevated like that. There's so many weird choices in this film. Like there's like a line like, you think you're like a god. He appears on a rooftop, like a little tiny figure. Yeah. There's like a very long shot of him walking from far away and just coming towards the camera.
Yeah,
jazz playing.
Very long shot.
It's so long, and you're kind of like, okay, why are you watching this? And then you realize it's like, oh, you're like watching a real scene caught in, I guess, 1959, 1960, whenever they actually filmed this. I know it was released 61, but you're seeing like period-appropriate cars. You're seeing like a man like becoming larger and larger on the screen and becoming like covering the camera, almost like a cancer. There's so much going on.
That was a motif too, wasn't it? The zero cut into the camera on this one.
Right.
It happened a couple times.
Straight, exactly. Almost slam into the lens type of thing.
Right.
But it's interesting, and I think at the time the movie played well at certain festivals. I think maybe it got to Cannes or
I
something
think
kind of prestigious.
It missed Cannes by 2 weeks. I watched a little bit of the that documentary that came on Criterion Channel. It's basically the lead actor is the director, right? I just wanted to point in case you guys didn't know. Yeah.
Alan Barron.
Yeah, it's him in like 2006 walking around spots in New York. But I think he missed Cannes by 2 weeks, possibly. I mean, in terms of film festivals, I know that it was the Munich Film Festival in 1990. That really rediscovered it, and it was kind of considered a masterpiece after that. So.
Well, but even in its time in 1961, it played at certain festivals and kind of had this appreciation with artistic minded crowds or whatever. And there was, at that time, supposedly some critic or somebody told Alan Barron, and I think this is part of that documentary you're talking about, that this is the like Citizen Kane of its day.
Oh yeah. That did come up. Yeah,
it's an interesting comment because there's a lot of stuff where it's like there's a lot of artistry in how the movie is made. There's a lot of kind of pushing the genre forward, pushing the way films were being made forward. Where again, the voiceover, it's not like in a lot of film noirs or even Blade Runner, where it's like, oh, it's Harrison Ford we see on screen, Harrison Ford's voice we hear, then Harrison Ford's voice over we also hear. It's not Clockwork Orange where it's the same deal. In this one, we see this character, we hear his voice, and then we hear this other voice that's his head, but it's something different.
Yeah.
And because of that, and because of like some of, perhaps they were production considerations and the idea that limited budgets and kind of trying to get away with stealing shots and doing some of these things, doing those really, really long shots down the street because they're just kind of padding the movie, but filling it with voiceover that is kind of interesting and engages you, but it's not directly like sort of moving the plot forward. And and if you took those things out, the movie would be about 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
But because of those, like, not following the mold of genre films,
right?
It has that auteur aspect that Citizen Kane did. But another way that it's kind of similar to Citizen Kane is that like it wasn't appreciated in its time,
right.
And Alan Barron had to go find some other way of supporting himself because filmmaking wasn't it.
Director, actor, star. I mean, that's the other directed by the star of the film.
Yeah.
So did people just not fully get it? Was this like too early for audiences at the time, before its time kind of thing? Or ahead of its time, I mean? Is that the case?
I don't know what the distribution story was on this film. It feels like an indie, but was it Universal that picked it up? I feel like I saw, Universal. I feel like I saw a Universal logo at the end. I can't imagine Universal Pictures is like, oh man, can't wait to get out this Christmas downbeat film. I mean, yeah. It's I think it was made independently. I know it was shot for $20,000, which I just did the little calculator. That's just under $200,000. So that's the if you want to think about how much the film was made for, now it's a $200,000 film, which is very low budget film.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Apparently the producer was the cinematographer, and
wow, yeah.
Yeah, Barron did all his own stunts, including falling in the cold water, which is that whole sequence was filmed during a Hurricane Donna. So
wow,
interesting.
Yeah, they just happened to be filming. That's why it's all windy. But I think it works because
it definitely works. That turbulent, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
absolutely.
And then it's out on the docks, I guess, of like Long Island. It creates such a weird alien atmosphere for this film set in the city.
Because everything else is so still and very static. Yeah,
and metropolitan too. Suddenly you're like among like boats and like
and
walkways.
Weeds and
Yeah, and he has a line about God working in mysterious ways, and it shows, this is after he's been shot, it shows that location, the wooden boards and the reeds. It has like, it's just empty without any people. And it almost implies that like God is there watching and witnessing this like empty landscape and this murder. It's a very poetic moment in what should just be like a gangster film. It blew me away this time.
That's what I mean, and it exactly like it has this quality, most likely because of just some of the production limitations and whatever, and like okay, we only have this one shot of him walking down the street, and that's going to be the thing that we play while we have this voiceover. That's key. Or we have this really, really long shot on the train, and we'll just kind of pad that out with talk about him being born, and then like you're saying, like they had a cutaway. Maybe it was something like they had to like splice two things together, and they didn't have any other angles, so they cut to this moment. But because of decisions that maybe they wouldn't have made if they had a lot more money, it puts this poetic spin on it, and the audience is forced to engage with it a little differently than they would something that was sort of fully financed like Roadblock or whatever. But also because it was done so artfully, it kind of has this this extra level to it.
Oh, I mean, he's literally talking about how everyone's alone in the world and thinking about his own loneliness. And he's an orphan. And he's watching orphans, like, line up outside.
Right.
He didn't even realize he was staying next to one until, like, he looked out the window and he was like, oh, shit, this reminds me of my childhood, yeah.
Exactly. It's so simple. That part's brilliant.
Yeah, it really is. That's what I love about it. It's not trying to trick you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what's great is that there's all these trappings of it, you know, being a gangster movie or, you know, film noir or, you know, all these other moments of him doing his job that he kind of fell into, was forced into, type of thing. But as you see, like the thing he really, really wants is to not be in this and to go straight and to, like, you know, have a connection with people that he just, like, otherwise doesn't have because he's wandering around the streets like Travis Bickle, like stalking this guy.
And he
thinking
can't
these
be
crazy
seen.
Part
Part of his job is to not be noticed in these places that he goes, right?
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Like,
how about his date with Lori? The worst date of all time?
Yeah, probably the worst. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
Obviously, Paul Schrader and Scorsese have seen this movie and
for sure, you know,
had to have incorporated it into Taxi Driver.
Again, I'm thinking that maybe Fincher did too, because most of The Killer is actually very funny. He uses a lot of these maxims and, like, pumping yourself up, like
self-help type of things.
Yeah, like hollow aphorisms. Yet he makes a lot of mistakes in the film. The whole film is about how the killer, you know, Fassbender makes a mistake early in the film and spends the rest of the film atoning for it, but he still fucks up along the way. And, like, you're hearing this, like, voiceover of, like, you know, be precise, take emotion out of it, and yet he still fucks up. So, like, in this film,
kind of like Travis Bickle, right?
A little like Travis Bickle, and then here he's even in the other apartment, and he hears the phone ring, and he looks at it, and, like, the narration's like, easy now, cool it. You almost thought that was a call from Lori. This isn't your apartment. I mean, he's fucking up himself. He's getting distracted by his own emotions, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where that voice is coming from. Maybe that's, you know, the emotions side of him that's trying to, you know, there's like a different detached, disembodied person within him, you know, that's... Yeah.
They should do a Pixar Inside Out, but for this guy. For, what's it? Baby Boy Frankie Bono. Yeah.
Baby Boy, yeah. I love that name.
Great name, Baby Boy Frankie Bono.
There's Baby Boy Frankie Bono, Big Ralph.
Yeah. He's a gangster and he's a baby? It's exactly what Charles McGraw would have called him.
Roadblock, yeah.
Yeah, it is with Charles McGraw. He is one of the sweet babies.
Come on, this baby. What's his name? Baby.
Oh, Big Ralph. I'm glad you pointed out Big Ralph. So that
Creepo.
actor, very creepy. He's got to be a New York actor because he pops up in a couple other films that I think are New York based. So I've seen him in Shock Corridor, the Sam Fuller film. Where the guy
Larry
goes
Tucker
into
is his name?
Yeah, Larry Tucker. He's only in a couple films, but they're, like, major films. He plays in Shock Corridor. It's like a guy goes into a mental asylum to check in. He's not actually crazy. I think he's like a writer, but he can't actually get out and convince anyone once he's in. His roommate is this big guy that sings opera all the time. That's this guy. And then a couple of years later, he's in Advise and Consent, which is an Otto Preminger film. It's a political film. That is the first Hollywood film to show a gay bar. It's an interesting moment, like, historically. It also has Betty White. Advise and Consent is a really, really good film. Henry Fonda, I believe. Charles Laughton, briefly. But yeah, this guy's in that too. So it's like, you know, he's kind of like a John Cazale situation. He's not in many films, but the ones he is in are, like, huge, like, great films.
They're all very good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's very picky.
What are you driving at, fatty? You know, Frank, I may be fat over here, but I'm not fat up here. You know, I figure we're going to have to renegotiate the contract. Renegotiate this?
Oh, I forgot to mention about Ralph. Right before he gets hit by the axe, when he goes into bed, he just leaves his apartment door open.
I know.
That's what lets a baby boy
he was fucked up,
enter.
So, you know, he was like, I got to sleep this off. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've never been so drunk, even when I was living in New York, that I just get home and leave my apartment door wide open. Like, I get that he's fucked up. You're right.
Yeah. But that's a new level. Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Oh, God.
Look what Big Ralph got for Christmas. Isn't that nice? Yeah, isn't that nice?
Did anyone think that the main guy, the director, looked a little bit like Liev Schreiber mixed with Johnny Cash?
That's a good call.
That's That's interesting. The one that I always think of, and I've seen it in the movie, he looks like this, but also on the Criterion DVD cover or poster or whatever, he looks like the Hustler era George C. Scott to me.
Oh, interesting. He looks like De Niro in Goodfellas to me. The way that De Niro smokes darts, look, they smoke similarly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just also want to point out another sort of coming out of the Red Scare 50s Blacklist era. This was written uncredited again by Waldo Salt, who did like Midnight Cowboy and Serpico, Day of the Locust, which I haven't actually seen. Famous one. I think one of the Hollywood 10. One of the people that like lost his career in that decade. Right. So, yeah. Also, he was gonna murder the big Ralph the Big Guy with a fire axe. That is a brutal.
Fucking nuts, right? Yeah. He does hit him with it, right? And then he ends up strangling.
Yeah.
And then he ends up strangling him, right? Like, which is technically, like, when you think about it, even worse, right?
Yeah.
You're feeling a person die, like...
Yeah.
And the way that Ralph goes out is pretty satisfying. I mean, the guy's a complete creepo from the beginning, You obviously don't want him to win, and he's always like... Well, yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit, and then he finds out who the actual target was, and he's like, well, now it's going to cost you a little bit more. And it's like he kept doing this. He had that sweaty, greasy look on his face all the time, like upper lip sweat. Ugh, God.
Such a piece of shit. Yeah.
I love that character though. Like it was really neat to see him, and it was I said it before, but I liked that Baby Boy meets all these different people along the way, along this journey he's on, and it's a very simple kind of from point A to point B kind of tale.
Yeah. You even see him like have fun, like the peanut pushing contest with the nose.
Right.
Weird.
What
scene.
A fun game, huh? And that swinging '60s party that they were at there, like let's just roll some peanuts with our noses. Like what the hell?
Simpler times, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny too because like the so the movie comes out in '61, maybe it was shot in '59, '60, somewhere in there, and it was definitely this like brackish film where it's like half in the world of classic 50s film noir and half in the world of the swinging 60s, and it's
and New Hollywood and what's to come with the New
Hollywood, like the jazz soundtrack, all these different things, like the avant-garde way of constructing it, all that stuff, and it just like it really has a little bit of both in there.
I'm glad that you guys love this film. Blast of Silence I first saw in 2016 or so, maybe on TCM late one night, and then I saw it again streaming when I started doing the Noir page. Actually, I was looking for Christmas Noirs, probably cool. 2019, and then I've just seen it a couple times since then. It's every time I watch it, I notice something new. This time it made me realize just how kind of ominous Santa Claus himself is, a stranger coming down the chimney. I'm sure there's a lot of like 80s hack comedians that have done bits about who's the stranger coming into your house.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like well trod,
The story that what's her name tells in Gremlins.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say Phoebe Cates.
And speaking of scary Santa Clauses, shall we talk about the Silent Partner?
Yeah, I know that was a good lead into another scary Santa Claus that really creeped me out.
Yeah.
The Silent Partner from 1978. Yep.
Yeah.
Boom.
Way better than I remember.
This was an awesome movie. Yeah, this was great.
I remember liking this movie, but when you suggested it, I was like, yeah, I liked it enough. And then I rewatched it, and I'm like, oh, this movie's so fucking good.
It's really good, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Elliot Gould and Christopher Plummer, and I had, never seen Christopher Plummer this young. I mean, I guess we saw Dreamscape, right? But that was
Dreamscape,
6 years after, maybe?
Sound of Music, right? Isn't he in that?
I've never seen that movie though.
Von Traps.
Yeah. There's absolutely no reason that I would see that movie. I don't think, unless we did it for this show.
He apparently hated doing that movie.
Okay.
The story with that film, from what I remember. By the Sound of Music is very good for what it's worth, but I mean it's also
I know. I get it. I'm not talking shit. There's never been a reason for me to watch it. Now there is though. We're doing these movies that I've never seen before.
For sure. It looks. That's the thing about that. I was actually just talking about this with Jordan. It's not. It looks so fucking good. Like the Technicolor, whatever camera,
sure.
Like the lens there. It's one of the rare films that because it was such a hit, and then like
Sound of Music, you mean?
Yeah, and because it was like such a hit early on, like. There's a couple films like that. I guess maybe Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, where it's like each stage of like physical media, they preserved it so well. So like you watch it, it looks like it was filmed. Yeah, that's my. I'm not even a huge fan of like the music of Sound of Music. It just looks really good. He hated that experience. He fought to play Captain Von Trapp, and A, can't really sing, and B, didn't get along with Julie Andrews the whole time. So it's like, why did you fight for this like musical role, dude? Yeah.
Well, that's the second appearance of a Robert Wise movie we've talked about. I think Blood on the Moon was another one.
Oh, nice. Robert Wise, one of the most flexible directors of all time.
Seriously, yeah. And the editor of Citizen Kane. So there we go. Even more connections to our conversation.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, Silent Partner, it's crazy because this is definitely a tax shelter era
Toronto.
70s Canadian thriller. They got an American star, that Elliot Gould.
Is this his wilderness years? I don't think he's quite the same level of celebrity he might have been when like MASH.
This is after MASH. This is after
MASH was early 70s.
Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice.
Right. I'm saying
it's after Long Goodbye.
He's kind of on the downswing.
I see what you mean.
Because he was such he was famously very difficult to work with, and I think that's why he kind of stopped appearing in films for a little bit there.
Interesting.
And it was based on a novel, but like the writer of the screenplay would go on to be a little more famous, Curtis Hanson.
Yeah.
The writer and director of LA Confidential and Wonder Boys, 8 Mile, River Wild, all kinds of stuff.
By the way, did you guys see the River Wild reboot with Leighton Meester and Adam Brody?
Did not.
Honestly, pretty good.
Really?
It's on Netflix. It's pretty good. Yeah. Only mentioning because no one talked about it. It came and went, and they like produced it. And my sister-in-law is a huge Gossip Girl fan, so it was a big thing in our house.
Awesome.
A lot of nudity in this, like more than I thought, like more than I remember.
Tons of boobs, a lot of boobs.
Yeah.
4 different sequences. Are you guys big Simpsons fans, like 90s Simpsons fans?
Totally.
That's when I watched it, yeah.
Same with me. All right. Troy McClure, his whole scandal with the fish. Did anybody think of that during his obsession with the fish?
Are you gay?
Gay? I wish. If I were gay, there'd be no problem. No, what I have is a romantic abnormality. One so unbelievable that it must be hidden from the public at all costs.
Hey, I thought you said Troy McClure was dead.
No, what I said was he sleeps with the fishes. You see...
Tony, please, no. I just ate a whole plate of dingamagoo.
Exactly.
And the other connection thread to Blast of Silence is, again, like, trapped people. In Blast of Silence, you have, like, the guy with all the rat cages. Here, it's the aquariums. I think
right.
There is something about, like, Elliot Gould. This film especially, people are very trapped. I mean, like, just the idea of banks and bank tellers, you have people like now behind like a glass window, and there's all these aquariums, and there's like these big high-rise buildings, and Toronto is very under construction. I don't know what period in the city's history, but like it seems that like every other shot has like a crane or a building being built. So there's this like trapped feeling in this film that kind of comes through not just from the fish, but a lot of the other aspects.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, earlier this year, we did an episode about some Toronto thrillers, and Jesse Hawken came on to talk about that, a Toronto native himself.
Canucksploitation, is that the phrase?
Well, so we did some of that, but, I did Cronenberg, and then we did an Adam McGoyan film. But what he talked about was like how, in the late 70s, one of the movies we did was Stone Cold Dead, and like it was still kind of the Toronto he loved and misses, and how now Toronto has just been built into a very generic and ugly city is kind of how he put it. And it seems like what's happening in the background of The Silent Partner, which becomes a big plot point, where they're building that high rise and all the little construction cranes and everything else, that this is the sort of upswing of that construction boom to turn it into the Chipotle verse and like the very generic city. It's like, everywhere is the same.
Right.
Everywhere is nowhere. But, this is filmed in a time where it still had a lot of character everywhere you went, like the little Silver Dollar Club that they went to a couple times.
Yeah.
I think that's still there because like Google mapped
really?
it. I think it's still there, or there's somewhere else in Toronto now called the Silver Dollar Club.
I see.
Yeah. It looked the interior looked different, but the exterior I thought was the same. So hopefully it has still a little bit of that charm left over.
But we didn't have Elias Koteas doing the emceeing at this club, like
right. That's yes, exactly.
Yeah. Is it Exotica? Was that what that was called?
Exotica, exactly.
Yeah. That was a good one.
But man, this movie is really interesting. I actually thinking about it now, it's like, okay, only the first sort of half of the movie is set at Christmas. But then I guess you could say that for all three of these movies in this block, where
they go into New Year's, right? This is a holiday block.
They start off at Christmas, and it becomes very crucial that it's at Christmas, and then it moves on to some aftermath in all three of the movies. And in this one, it's like the example of that, where it's like it's like every single bit of the opening has a plant in it. It's like he takes a little carbon paper and draws up martini glass on it, and he's like, hey, you want to go for a
drink?
And then he pulls out another check slip, and he sees,
I got a gun, give me all the cash.
And he's like, what the hell is this? And then like the very next day, so he works at a bank in a mall, and he comes back to the mall, grabs an Orange Julius or whatever, and is just kind of like chilling before he has to head into work.
Orange Julius and a Cinnabon. And
yeah, exactly. And Annie Ann's pretzel.
I was about to, or a Wetzel.
Wetzel's pretzels, exactly. And is looking at the Salvation Army style Santa, and notices his sign has very distinctive looking G's that kind of look like a Soviet kind of like hammer and sickle.
Exactly. Almost a symbol for a G.
It's very strange. And then he had a flashback to that little carbon paper.
Wasn't that really well done?
I love all the process in this movie. I'm like, each of these movies, like, not all of them are full on process movies. Like, there's some places where they skip the process part and kind of get on with it. And they even do it in this one too, where it's like we see a lot of process of him taking the body out of the apartment. And that's
you don't
a
know
really
how
great
it gets
set
in
piece.
the cement. You don't
know how it gets in the cement. Exactly.
Yeah, it's almost a little far-fetched that it would get in there, but you buy it, right? Like you're like, okay, fine. Just because of, I think that's because of the exchange with Plummer right after that. He's like,
totally.
They'll never know she's in there. Right. Great choice. You're worse than I am. I like you.
and given the other hour and 15 minutes before that, you saw him do all these things in such detail that you're like, okay, this guy's like, clever enough to be able to do this and think on his feet and come up with this thing. But what I really love is like how he kind of outsmarts Christopher Plummer from the very, very beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
And similar to the Charles McGraw character in Roadblock, he finds this dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Right.
And sees a way to get himself a little, parachute. Yep. And then he can take his vacation and do whatever he wanted to do.
But how quick did he come up with this whole plan? Like it's between like the sequence you saw.
Well, what was great was that like we saw two failed attempts. Well, he got the carbon slip on the first failed attempt. There's a second failed attempt with that, kid like bugging him like, hey, Santa, give me a carbine double action shot Red Ryder BB gun.
Right.
And he's like,
you'll shoot your eye out, kid.
And the woman's like, that's weird. Why do they hire a mall Santa who doesn't like kids?
Yeah.
But like, so he had two sort of failed robberies. So he's like had enough time to kind of cotton on to it. And then we see him get the whole plan and get it to work. And, pull the bills, and he's like, that's all the money I've got. Because he brought the lunchbox, he brought the whole thing, he was like ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And the Christopher Plummer gets so frustrated or whatever, and he's like, put it in there, you son of a bitch, or whatever he says, quit fucking around. And then he gets caught and has to run away.
When he runs away, by the way, that's Santa shooting at people in a mall running up an escalator.
And the security guard shooting back at him.
Yeah.
There's 100 people out there.
It's a fantastic scene. It's like such a great Christmas noir moment. Santa shooting, yeah.
But to back up a second there, though, he runs because Elliot Gould, he hit the silent alarm, but he didn't hit it until the bills were out. Like, he planned out enough of the money being taken out of the till and into the box. So it was already, he was scheming this whole time.
So that it would be something he would be arrested for. Exactly.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I also really like that method that the bill triggers the alarm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen that in a film before.
I liked how they described it too. They really got into the science.
Yeah.
There's a metal coil that's attached to this, and one step makes
so
a connection.
So many 70s films are like that, where it's just like an unnecessary...
It's probably new tech or something, you know? They had to explain it to the audience,
I mean, there's enough to like figure it out as you're watching it, but it was a good place to be like, okay, let's explain exactly what this was.
Yeah. Because it does come back at the end. I mean, he does use
come
that
back at the
same...
end.
Yeah.
Right.
I love how he gets Christopher Plummer at the end. Essentially, it's very smart. It's just like making it clear to the public that there's a robbery going on. It's almost like the most dumb baseline decision that anyone in that situation would do, and almost very unexpected because you think he's so in cahoots and has the pressure on him. It's like, no, this is still a robbery. I could still get you in trouble by pointing this out publicly. It's such a simple solution. Have you guys seen The Apartment?
Yeah.
The idea of him being in love with someone at work who's sleeping with a married boss.
Yeah.
He's also in the apartment. It's like, that's why it's the apartment. He's like lending his own apartment for his boss to have these affairs, right? But he's in love with that girl that the boss is sleeping with. And this, it's like he's lending his time and body as a date for his boss to be able to carry on with these affairs. So I love that one little connection, little Billy Wilder and the schmuckness.
The boss makes him take his side piece to his own Christmas party at his house to meet his wife and family. It's like, Jesus, man, don't you want to distance yourself a little bit?
Seriously.
Play the game.
What's funny about that is just how, I don't know, all that stuff too. It's like it not only did the like thriller and the process so well, but all the interpersonal shit really was working on all levels for me. Like the John Candy and the sort of new chick who kept wearing those like funny t-shirts and he's like, she got tits up to here, and like that creepy guy.
Bankers do it with interest. Was that
exactly?
Yeah. Again, very 70s shirt too.
Yeah. And then it's like, we see this sort of John Candy relationship kind of happening in the background, but you're following it, and they're like, "Oh, is that a thing now? Yeah, I guess it's a thing." And then there's that other creepy guy at the bank. He's like, so you could try anything once," and he's talking to the girl.
Yeah,
and
he's very creepy.
And then later we see them up in the bathroom. Now, so much time had passed between that Christmas party and John Candy getting married with her being pregnant that we weren't supposed to think it was the other guy's baby, were we?
I thought so, because didn't Elliot Gould walk in on her getting railed by that guy in the bathroom at the holiday party?
It was getting started.
I think that it implies...
that they took it all the way, but I mean, it felt like so much time had passed that...
I'm not sure. I didn't get the idea that much time had passed. I thought it was still the holiday season.
Yeah, that's how I felt too.
Which also makes no sense because she was like brand new and John Candy married her like a week later. But
just a very 70s thing to do.
Totally. I did get the sense between that other guy looking at Elliot Gould, because Elliot Gould's the one that walked in on them. Like, he's the only one that knows about the affair. There's a lot of like weird eye play going on. It's not very clear, but I think it might be that other guy's kid is the I think that's the joke there.
That's what I got out of that.
Yeah. That's what I'm reading. It doesn't really line up.
I mean, it totally could have been. Yeah, I guess it doesn't fully matter, but it was interesting that there was that reading of it as well. But what I really loved about the interpersonal stuff was the complicated relationship between the Elliot Gould character and the Susanna York character, Miles and Julie, and it seemed like they did have an attraction for one another, and they did want to kind of go for it, and they kept getting cock blocked by Christopher Plummer. Like, he kept like calling and fucking it up, and there's that later on, he like kisses her right outside to try and make sure that Elaine can in disguise can get out, and
she would have recognized her.
Exactly.
My favorite moment of the movie is at the wedding, and it's between Susan York and Elliot Gould. It's when he receives that really kind of stupid card with like the moaning sounds. Yeah, and the woman in the bikini. And she asks about his date. Is she the one that sent you the card? And he has like his face in his hands and he just like shakes his head. And it's the way he...
And she's like, wow, good for you.
Yes, her surprise of like, wow, really? Like, there's more to you than I thought. And he's still smiling with his face in his hands. That is such a good... that's also why I like Elliot Gould. He's very cool and laid back sometimes. Yeah. And I love that exchange.
Well, and that moment in particular, I feel like it was the linchpin that kind of helped that ending of them getting together work.
100%, because he's no longer this... I mean, he collects fish. He has kind of another boring
exactly.
hobby.
He's this very boring... he's very honest Joe, and like
very much
chess
so,
and
he has
nothing going on exactly in his life, and he's not worth pursuing, and he's weird, and he keeps stopping it right before they're about to do the deed.
That I actually thought was a good call, because they're both fucked up and she was a coworker. And I was like, that moment's aged actually pretty well for 2023.
There you go. Yeah. Maybe,
I was like watching that. I was like, that's really, I mean, 1978. I don't know how many other men would have done that, but
Well, but he had to deal with Christopher Plummer, and had to shoo her away to make sure his crime wasn't discovered.
Right.
But
we should probably talk about Christopher Plummer's character in this a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're kind of remarkable, you know that? I don't know how you managed to pull it off. Well, I guess you're going to have to tell me one of these days. But we worked it together, didn't we? I mean, we ran the same risks, didn't we? We're partners.
I'm going to call the police.
What are you going to tell them?
He was an odd cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
His like fake eyelashes, his fingernails.
Was he like an early like gender fluid type?
Foppish. I definitely get foppish is the word I keep coming back to. Even though you don't ever see him with men in this film, I do get the sense that he's very a la carte, open.
Right.
What also to me is the coded moment is when he takes off the Santa outfit and he's wearing that like fishnet shirt that like it's like
chainmail. Yeah.
Yeah. And his
he's like the bad guy from Commando.
Haven't seen Commando.
Exactly.
So yeah, the bad guy in Commando's got the same kind of thing on, like this like mesh.
Remember
shirt,
when I told you I was going to kill you last? I lied.
That's a good one. You should see that one. That's fine. It's not great. But his name's Arthur Reichel. He's this awful person in this, right? Like he seems to have some sort of he's got like a group with him with this other French girl. Well, she's Canadian, right? What was her name?
I thought. Well, she said she was from France, but yeah, maybe she was Canadian. I don't know.
But she's been working with him, and Elliot Gould had her figured out from the get-go. Like, again, it was one of those things where we saw Elliot Gould's like, no, I'm ahead of you, Reichel. Like, I know what you're doing.
Like, that's what was so great about the entire interplay the entire time. It's like, how well the Elliot Gould character was able to sort of anticipate these moves. And
because of the chess, right?
To sort of counter them.
Like a chess game?
Yeah, almost. And it's like, he was just, a worthy fucking adversary, as they say. And it was a little of the dynamic you get in Heat between, Vincent and Macaulay.
They're watching us right now.
Yeah. And like, how each one of them kind of respects the other in a certain way, even though they're like pitted against one another.
Nemesis.
And, you definitely get multiple times where Christopher Plummer really has that admiration for him.
Mm-hmm.
You get that feeling that there is some sort of attraction, maybe.
Absolutely,
both in the game plane, because his way of expressing his sexuality is also very violent. But he enjoys the game part of it. He enjoys how well Elliot Gould has been able to play him, and being able to like parry his every sort of move, including killing the French woman in the craziest,
Horribly.
most horror
Holy
scene.
shit.
Like a full-on giallo scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no violence. I mean, there's some violence, but there's really no gore and blood in this movie. And then all of a sudden, they hit you over the neck with a huge one, and it's a decapitation they go for. You know, like it's full-fledged.
And it wasn't like, it was a fast accident. No, he like takes her head and saws it back and forth.
That's the part.
Her neck across
the broken
glass.
aquarium, right? Like it's like a lot of things that were. Yeah, it's just wow,
unbelievable.
All in the service of his weirdness.
Right.
There's also the knife through the fish against the wall. I think until her murder, that's probably as far as it goes, and you're like, oh, okay, that's probably as bad as it gets. But
he early on in like the bathhouse, he beat the shit out of that woman and like stepped on her face.
Oh, you're right.
All
Yes.
that kind of
Oh my
stuff.
god.
Like,
yeah, that was really rough to watch. Yeah, that was pretty fucked up. Yeah.
But like all those guys were just like, oh, you went too far this time. This time? How many times? How many times do you do this?
Totally.
Right.
And I do want to point out that like there's a huge history of queer-coded villains in Hollywood. I mean, Hitchcock, so many Hitchcock films, Rope and North by Northwest, and then even up to like Ursula and the Little Mermaid,
even Psycho in a way. I mean,
Psycho
as well.
Yeah, Rope. Yeah, I mean, so this isn't anything really too new by making him a little bit flexible in his sexuality, but Christopher Plummer plays it so well that you feel like this is like could be like a real person, like
totally. I mean, he plays it with such complexity, and you know, it's like he just has almost the sort of Max Schreck, fingers that he does sometimes.
I think he has long fingernails too, right?
And he's got those funky fingernails
to add to it, yeah.
And you know, his crazy eyelashes. I mean, he has so much going on there, and you can just feel the excitement and almost sexual energy when he's on the phone with Elliot Gould.
His eyes in the mailbox are so fucking scary. I don't know why.
When he poked his head through it. Yeah, exactly.
That scared the hell out of me when it just flicks open and you just see him looking through. I was like, wow, man. There's little moments that were really, really terrifying in this. And you're right, he was an absolute monster. And that's why, and one that you could find in reality.
Yeah,
like that could be a real. Yeah.
Yeah, you read about that, like, all the time, like, some sexual crimes associated with a murder. This is also based on a Danish novel and film. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Think of a Number?
Think of a Number. Bibi Andersson is in the original film. She's in a lot of Ingmar Bergman films. But I just wanted to point that out. The story did kind of come from somewhere. It was so much better rewatching it this time, and it's just so subtle and has these like weird moments, and even the way he's like staring at him in the police lineup. Christopher Plummer is so fucking creepy in this film.
Yeah, no, he is really, really good. Like everyone's great in it. I mean, just even the smaller parts or whatever. But Christopher Plummer has this real standout performance. In this, and just he is sort of fully committed and a fully sort of realized character.
Does Christopher Plummer have the win the award for like best longevity, or like what's the word for it? Where like you become
Lifetime
like
achievement award.
Yeah, like he got like way more famous as he got older. But then like later in his career, so I don't know if it's because of Beginners or around Beginners, but there's like Up, and then Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then Knives Out. A little bit before that, there's Beautiful Mind, The Insider.
The Insider, he's incredible in that.
He's like the late 90s onwards. He's just like at this like plateau that he just was not for a lot of the 70s and 80s.
He was amazing in a very small role, but very memorable role in 12 Monkeys, if you remember him in that.
Yeah.
Was he the doctor?
He was like
psychiatrist?
He was the guy at the sort of lab where the other guy ends up kind of leaking the biological
virus
that end up destroying the world.
Yeah, great actor. I just anything he's in, I kind of lean in at this point. Because he's going to surprise me.
But I'm on the same page as you, Alex. I think the Silent Partner. This is the second time I've seen it, and it was even better this time around. It was like just every little detail, and I forgot, because there's so many. It's like so chock full of details. Like there's so many I end up forgetting. You know, just like when he like steals the van, the sort of produce van, and frames Christopher Plummer with it to like fuck with him, and like, you know, it's like get him out of the way.
He just parks it in front of his place, right? Like,
right.
And then calls the cop.
And he's like, "Why would I park this in front of my place?"
Yeah. That was funny. He was getting taken. Why the hell would I do something like that? That was great.
And then, you know what? I forgot what the damn twist was with the French woman. I was like, where is this going? And then 2 scenes before that, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if she was setting him up the whole time, and then he like sees the scar on her leg or her butt or whatever it was, and then he puts it together and he pulls the Band-Aid off there. And I was like, shit, that's right. She actually was. It went the way that I was really hoping it would.
The scar should have been as an audience member, I totally didn't. I forgot about the twist as well. The scar should have been like the link, you know?
Exactly.
To his violence,
And then it's like her scene where she puts the safety deposit key on the little chessboard and then like gets the shit kicked out of her.
That's the end of her after that, right?
And, you know, I don't think it was supposed to kind of end up that way, but it kind of escalated into it. And then he just, you know, lost himself in his rage, I guess, and, you know, sawed her head completely off. And, you know, put himself in a position where maybe Elliot Gould was just going to go to jail for murder. And it was like...
Yeah.
But Gould, like, found a way out of it. And, like, the Hitchcock-like set piece of him trying to take the body in the rug out the fire escape that they had like kind of set up earlier when he gets away from Christopher Plummer that way. The whole thing was done so well, and it's like there's that newspaper boy is like, what the fuck? He trips over the thing.
He's hanging from the side.
He's hanging from the side.
I love all of that. The body and the rug. At first, I was like, isn't he going to make it so much worse by like messing with a crime scene? And then like, wouldn't getting rid of the body implicate him? Like, make it look like he did it?
It's definitely a risky move, yeah.
Very risky move. Apparently, that murder was even controversial at the time. It was like kind of, you know, in 1978, it was like, whoa, you know, a beheaded.
It's nasty.
Aquarium glass, and then the fact that he leaves the head in the glass in the tank too. You know,
right. Christopher Plummer, that is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this one was less French for black and more Italian for yellow. Because it was definitely
definitely
a little more giallo than
noir to giallo. Yeah,
100%. I also like stories where when someone is in a traumatic situation and it gets like news coverage, when suddenly they're like the focus of attention to everyone.
Yes,
everyone wants to talk to him at the party. He's very popular at work all of a sudden. That's just very true to life. You know, if someone's like suddenly on the news or involved in like a hit and run where there was a fatality or something, and you know them, you're like, all you want to do is talk to them about that situation.
Right.
So I liked that about this film, what he's going through in that.
And it would be hard for him not to be on the news, but it was one of those things that was like, don't be on the news, you know, like quit your job immediately, go somewhere else.
And of course, everyone in the film has seen it. You know, that classic film thing of if there's one thing on the news, all the key characters had to have seen that at the exact same time, you know.
Totally.
Yeah, old kind of movie logic, but. Yeah.
But you know, you know, even in the logic of this film, it works so well because it was a huge event. There's a shootout in a mall with a Santa over a bank robbery, and you know, of course, it's going to be on the news, and of course, people are going to watch that.
Oh, he's in drag at the end too when he dies. He tries to do the final. Yeah. So that's another.
And he's like, it was the bank's money. Well, who the hell's money do you think it was going to be?
Well, he's here. I'll give you 3 guesses what we've been talking about.
We want to hear the whole story.
After which you promise to drop the subject.
Great trilogy, y'all. I thought that this was one of the strongest blocks that we talked about, and thank you, Jeremy, for kind of insisting that they all be bangers. Because
I wanted to thank you both for that, because I think that part of the conversation on that text thread was we want all bangers, and I think we got it with this.
Yeah.
There's not a wasted minute in this block.
Yeah.
And, you know, these movies, some of them are kind of short. Hour and 17, I think, for some of them. But still, they moved well, and they had a lot of information and cool shit packed into, you know, not a lot of time, which, you know, maybe movies should take a note from that today and not make us sit in the theater for 3.5 hours.
100%.
I like a short movie, 90 minutes.
Bring back the 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing I just want to mention. Jeremy, we almost covered Repeat Performance. If anybody listening hasn't seen that, good little haunting noir. There's also kind of New Year's Eve noir. That's worth checking out if you have Criterion. Repeat Performance also was not kind of reclaimed or even shown on TCM until the last couple of years. It kind of has slipped through the cracks of history.
It was fully lost, I think, until they restored it recently, right?
Yeah. So just want to shout that out. And then there's another Peter Cushing Christmas movie, Cash on Demand. That's a Hammer film. Another sort of it's again also set at a bank with a hold up on Christmas time. So if you like Silent Partner, you might like Cash on Demand, and definitely check out Repeat Performance. All that whole Criterion Christmas collection is pretty solid in general.
And remember, when you sign up for the Criterion channel, use the code Grindhouse Institute.
God, I wish we had that.
That would be great, right?
Yeah.
I wish.
Criterion, call us.
Yeah, if you're listening out there, Criterion people, we'll take a sponsor.
Mubi is the one that seems to sponsor so many podcasts, so many film podcasts I listen to. So,
interesting.
Guys, thank you so much for inviting me back to talk about these fantastic
thank
films.
You. Would you like to plug anything? I know we've done this before several times, but I'd love for you to plug your OnlyFilmNoir and stuff. But anything else you got going on?
Hell yeah! Check out my writing at the Hard Times. Published pretty regularly there via the good grace of the editors. So Alex Vlahov, the Hard Times, have a couple headlines articles coming out pretty soon, and OnlyFilmNoir on Instagram, and that's how you can find me.
Fantastic!
Awesome.
Thank you very much for joining again.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Alex, it was a blast as always. And
it was a blast of silence.
Back. It was a blast of silence.
It was a blast of silent partner. It was really good to see you. Exactly. Really glad we could do this again, guys.
Glad there weren't any roadblocks in our way.
Yeah, I guess we didn't hit any roadblocks.
I wanted to fit it in. You did it. You did it effortlessly. That was perfect.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Father.
All right, next time we'll be going back to our one movie show format with the Midnight Movie. We're going to be doing a newer film with this. That's usually our thing, right? Our Midnight Movie is usually not one of our 1950s or 1930s films that we usually do. But this one's very new, so good on us. No One Will Save You from 2023. Very excited about this. This ended up on... I was listening to a horror podcast yesterday driving home from work, and this was on both of the top 10 of 2023 horror films.
Really?
Or would have been on the other person's had they not classified it fully as sci-fi. That was the argument. But it would have been on there. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to have that argument, too.
Yeah.
But looking forward to it. It's going to be an exciting film that, I don't know, it's gotten... a certain maybe buzz on the internet, but I just feel like it didn't have as much notoriety as it would have if it wasn't straight to streaming.
These underseen great films now, it really is. It sucks. I mean, it's great that they're easily available, but not everyone is seeing them, and the marketing is so different and non-existent in many instances, and it's really a shame. I've heard nothing but good things about this one.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it holds up, though.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But yeah, no one will save you.
Not a single person.
All right, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
Santa, I want a pelican and a train. Will I get them?
Oh, yes.
Will I really get them?
Yes.
Mom, Santa's gonna give me everything I want. He's got my toys in his pocket. Everything I want. He's got my toys in his...
That's enough.
Percy?
Mom, Santa's gonna...
I don't think so, dear. Imagine, a Santa Claus that doesn't seem to like children.
Merry Christmas.